Are you looking to improve employee engagement and retention? Do you struggle with decisions on who to hire or who to promote? I have an amazing opportunity for a forward-thinking, purpose-led, people-first organisation to work with me on the first pilot Happier at Work programme for corporates. The programme is entirely science-backed and you will have tangible outcomes in relation to employee engagement, retention, performance and productivity. The programme is aimed at people leaders with responsibility for hiring and promotion decisions. If this sounds like you, please get in touch at Aoife at happieratwork.ie. That's AOIFE at happieratwork.ie. You're listening to the Happier at Work podcast. I'm your host, Aoife O'Brien. This is the podcast for leaders who put people first. The podcast covers 4 broad themes: engagement and belonging, performance and productivity, leadership equity, and the future of work. Everything to do with the Happier at Work podcast relates to employee retention. You can find out more at happieratwork.ie. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Happier at Work podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to have you here. Now, as part of the celebration for reaching 100 episodes, I put it out to the masses and I asked people to submit any questions that they had for me. Now, this particular question wasn't really in tying with asking me a direct question. It was more a generic question about workplace, but I love it and I think it's really important to share it and to share my views on it. And I will add, if there's anything that you want answered, so this person asked the question anonymously, so do feel free to reach out and ask the question if you have it. If you have a burning question in relation to happiness at work, in relation to retention, engagement at work, then do feel free to reach out and ask that question. So I'm going to read out the question exactly as it was written. Have an ambitious team, most of whom want to progress upwards to management level. There are limited opportunities within the team for progression. Any advice on balancing keeping individuals motivated, being honest on possibilities, and preventing losing team members in this great reshuffle? Thanks. Now, what an interesting question. And as always, I would love to get your input onto this. I'd love to get your feedback and get involved in the discussion. I've written out a few notes here for how I would approach that. So I suppose the first thing to address is when the person says that people want to progress upwards to management level, like, do they really want to become managers? Do they really want to become people leaders? And I ask this because sometimes we see this as kind of the holy grail of, like, I want to become a manager because it has that prestige. It has the increased salary associated with it. And when we get there as managers, it's not actually what we thought it was, and it doesn't quite work out the way we expected. I know certainly that was the case in my experience. So really understanding the underlying motivation for why these people want to progress through the organisation. What is that motivation? Is it to get the status? Is it to get the recognition? The second point then is thinking about opportunities for a lateral move. I know this is becoming hugely important in organisations, especially as structures in organisations become a little bit flatter than they were previously. So thinking about an opportunity for a lateral move where someone would have the opportunity to learn something new, add to their skill set, maybe work with a new team. So thinking of just a different way that they don't necessarily have to progress through the organisation, but they can stay at the same level, but take on a new project or learn something new, a new skill set. Another option then, option 3, is to take on more responsibility. So giving people an increased level of responsibility, but not necessarily giving them the title to go with that. Now, I suppose there's kind of twofold to this, if you like. On the one hand, it might be seen as taking advantage of people. So you're giving them more responsibility, but you're not paying them more and you're not giving them that additional title. And I know certainly I've been in that situation in the past where I felt like I'm doing the job of the grade above, but I wasn't getting paid and I wasn't necessarily getting that recognition. But at the same time, it's giving people the opportunity to, I suppose, assess whether or not they're ready for that next level, assess whether they want to go to that next level, and also it can be seen as a way of recognizing people by actually giving them more work. So you're recognizing them in a different way. The fourth area then, and this kind of ties in with the first point around motivation, is really understanding, one of the key points was how to hold on to them and how to keep them motivated when there aren't necessarily those possibilities within the organization. And motivation really ties in with needs satisfaction. So making sure that people's needs are being satisfied at work. I have talked about this at length on the podcast. If you want some more specific details, do feel free to reach out to me directly. This is my area of interest, my area of absolute joy. I love doing this type of work. But it comes back to need satisfaction. So if you think about our universal needs of autonomy, relatedness, and competence. And they're universal needs. Everybody has those needs. There are also unique needs that people have, and they might have a need for self-expression. They might have a need for status or power or a higher purpose as well that they're working towards. So facilitating those kind of conversations and understanding what people's needs at work are is really, really important. I'll come back to the three universal needs in a second, but I just wanted to address this point first, that, just having those conversations, asking people outright what their needs are. They might not know, but they'll certainly know where they're being frustrated. So the areas where they feel frustrated at work is possibly an area where their needs are not being met. So facilitating those kind of conversations to understand what people really want and what motivates them is really important. So coming back to the universal needs of autonomy, relatedness, and competence. So giving them higher level of responsibility, giving them that sense of autonomy around decision making is a really great way to keep people motivated. The relatedness element is important for a couple of different points. So how well you get along with the people in your team. So do you actually get along with them? But also how you relate what you do on a day-to-day basis to what the organization is trying to achieve. And making that really explicitly clear to people is a really great motivator. And then the third element is around competence. And if you're giving people the opportunity to learn and develop new skills, then they are going to grow in competence. They're going to have that need. It's also sometimes referred to as mastery. They're going to have that need for mastery met, especially if it's something that's particularly challenging, but something that's within their grasp, within their area of strengths. So as I mentioned, if you want to know any more about this, if you have any questions yourself that you want to put forward to me, if you want to understand a little bit more about this idea of need satisfaction at work, do feel free to reach out to me. That is an area that I work in and I absolutely love speaking about it. I could speak about it all day. So do feel free to reach out to me. happieratwork.ie is the website, happieratwork.ie on Instagram, or Aoife O'Brien on LinkedIn. That's AOIFE O''BRIEN. That was another episode of the Happier at Work podcast. I am so glad you tuned in today. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I would love to get your thoughts. Head on over to social media to get involved in the conversation. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love if you could rate, review it, or share it with a friend. If you want to know more about what I do or how I could help your business, head on over to happieratwork.ie.